The world is full of ordinary people just like you and me, who have actually done pretty extraordinary things that you and I just look back on in awe, but we would walk past them on the street and not think a second that this person has led such an amazing life, all due to one thing. They've just backed themselves and they have become something that they are just great. My name's Kyl Reber, and this podcast is about just that. Ordinary people who are now showing us that it is possible for ordinary people like you and I to back themselves and become something amazing. So join me in listening to these people, listening to their stories, because who knows, one day I might be talking to you. Hello and welcome to the Kyl Reber podcast. This is a podcast where I interview people that are very ordinary people on the outside doing very extraordinary things, and very near and dear to me people who I am probably learning more about them in the next hour than I have for the last 20 years. And I feel that this podcast is going to be just like that. I guess I'll do the intros as we go. But this is a person that I have known since I was a teenager. He didn't have anywhere near as much grey hair as that. I think there was a portion you actually had no hair. You did the weekly head shave like me.
Did the weekly head shave.
Grahame Lloyd, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Kyl. It's great to chat to you again.
Now, for those who are watching this visually, to put it out there, Lloyd is shitting himself right now. So we've had a little session of prompting and what we're going to talk about. But I'm sure as this goes on, you'll realise that this chat is very cool, because there are some real things that you do that a lot of people don't do, I guess you might say.
Yep.
So for those who are new to the podcast, you can listen to previous episodes as to how we do things. But this is what we have. So Lloydie's been given a set of 10 questions. He's tried to answer them as best as he can. Full knowledge that he doesn't like talking about himself too much, but we're going to prompt that, because the main reason I want to get Lloydie on is what he does is very special. But we have 10 questions. We work through them. We often go off on tangents, which we will. But getting into it, number one, birth to now, 7 minutes. 3, 2, 1, go.
Awesome. Okay, so I was born in New Zealand to Australian parents. So my parents are Australian. They met over there when they were fruit picking. I was born there. Then we moved back to Australia when I was around 1. Then we were here until about 1974, after my 2 sisters were born, and then we moved back to New Zealand. So it was really good. We moved back. I spent all my primary school basically in New Zealand.
North or south?
I was born in the South Island, but I grew up in the North Island, so just in rural New Zealand. Growing up, seeing things a bit differently. It was an amazing place to grow up, natural areas. We're always in rural communities, so, there's always rainforest and lakes and rivers and all the fun stuff, growing up, riding bikes, playing with the neighbourhood kids. And I guess one of the big differences, and one of the things that I really enjoyed living there that end up playing out a bit now in the work I do, was when I went to school in New Zealand, there was a huge focus on Maori culture. We learnt the songs, we learnt the language, we learnt about culture. But when I did my secondary school in Australia, there was no real talk about First Nations people, whether they be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders, or however that panned out. There was no real talk, no language, no songs, no history, no culture that was taught at all, and that was a really big difference for me.
I was over there late last year, August last year, and I was in Christchurch mostly, and I was talking to the people that I was staying with, and they said one thing they're even looking at now, like the English names of streets, they're changing them to Maori names, and schools have like the name of the school, but the Maori names underneath. And I just said, without getting into a separate podcast all talking about this, I said, why do we not do this? And they've embraced that for a very long time. I mean, if you were to talk to typical Maori people, there would be obviously that part where it got shunned away. but it's literally never gone, has it? It seems to have always been there.
No, and I think it's a real big part of popular culture there now. If you watch, I think there's all these influencers that all speak to that. You know how Maori culture is so strong. So that's really interesting. And in Australia, I think it's been, you know, a lot of people have kicked back about it, whether it be changing Ayers Rock to be Uluru, or even locally we do some work with the cleanups that I do over in Mulgumpen, but you know, people still keep calling it Moreton Island, and I think it's the right thing to do to revert to those names. And yeah, sure, still have both names, but I think reverting to those names and running with those names will lead a lot further along the path to healing and getting along better in general. You know, just showing that bit of respect, because those other names haven't been in place for that long anyway. So I don't really see the big issue in it. If both names are there initially, then that's going to save confusion. And, you know, I think we should be making that transition a lot faster than we are.
How, so the transition, so you did high school in Brisbane?
Yeah, did high school in Logan. That's the really nice area of Brisbane.
For those who are listening outside of Brisbane, Logan, especially in the 70s, been a very interesting part of Brisbane to grow up in.
Yeah, it was a great part to grow up in.
No wonder you're a fast runner.
I guess we spent a lot more time, you know, growing up in the 80s, you know, in that area. We spent a lot of time, you know, outdoors and keeping ourselves busy.
Logan would have had a lot of bush.
It was a heap of bush. It wasn't so developed. There was bushland everywhere. Spent a lot of time in nature, a lot of time just jumping on our bikes and, you know, riding down the streets or riding up to Mount Tambourine or the local river, or all the things that I don't think people appreciate as much anymore. You know, it was a really cool time to grow up because you spent all the time with your friends exploring, which is, I guess, where my love of nature comes from. Was we would always be outside, whether it was through, you know, scouting that I participated in for probably about 9 years, you know, getting outside, going camping, going to different areas, spending the time in the bush, getting that appreciation for those natural areas.
Were your parents, like you just said, they met fruit picking? So was this something that just was a staple growing up? Did that come from your parents, or was this something that you just found? Because as I said to you in our chat off air, I've known you for the better part of 30 years. And I'll be honest, the first probably 10 to 15, I didn't know that you were so into this. So do you think it's something that got passed down?
Yeah, definitely. My dad was a real bushy. So I think, you know, my dad always wanted to be, you know, out in nature. I always remember him being outside. You know, he worked 2 jobs, so he would always be working. But when he wasn't, I guess it was also a cheaper option, was to, you know, jump in the car and go for a drive and go for a walk. And we always did that. We'd go camping when we could. So I think, it definitely started there, but I think I got more appreciation over time for natural areas. And as time rolled on and development increased, and I could see the natural areas that I had, I guess, enjoyed my youth in just slowly disappearing from development.
What about, so high school's finished. Was school your thing, or not really your thing?
Definitely not. My thing was getting out with my mates and having a good time. So
were you a scallywag? Were you downright little turd?
No, I was okay. I'm all right. I think it was just I didn't apply myself well at school. But I went to school through to grade 12 for the social life, you know, just to catch up with my friends, learn a bit at school. I really have always been very determined. So I'm able to do what I want to. So I've always been able to focus and achieve whatever I wanted to achieve. So I think that skill, you know, trumped what I hadn't learnt at school. So I've always found, you know, and through all my jobs, I've normally worked my way up from the bottom. So whether it be as a trolley boy when I started at Coles to finishing up as a manager, or as a perimeter guard at Cap Security to finishing up as a general manager. I've always been able to work my way up the chain just through determination and just constantly being there and learning everybody's roles. I think that's really important in anything you do, is understanding what other people do and also never asking people to do anything you wouldn't do. And I think that's a key thing to management or anything in life, is that if you know and you've done those roles, I think that really helps develop you not only as a leader but also as a person.
And I think that's a thing. So like you just said then, so you've had a few lives or hats. So when you first left school, baker?
Yeah, when I first left school, I was so I guess I started working when I was about 11 years old. So I started just delivering pamphlets, just wanted to be able to buy an ice cream or something, lash out and buy an ice cream. And
were you pushed to work by your parents, or
never.
I just want to work?
I just wanted to work and buy a radio, tape deck at that time. So I just wanted to be able to buy a tape deck and probably a TV to watch probably the Saturday morning cartoons at 11 years old. So it started off pamphlets, then worked as a paper boy for about 5 years. All through the Azaria Chamberlain thing. So it was an interesting time to be a paper boy, just riding around the streets on your bike, which I loved, going to pubs, which kids couldn't do back then, and selling papers in pubs and, those sort of places, just getting out and dealing with people and learning those things. And then when I became 15, the big goal for everybody back then was to work at Coles, which had only just opened at Beenleigh, and then I started in Coles as a trolley boy and worked myself my way up through Coles and worked there, and then kept working there and worked my way through management from working in fresh produce, trolley boy, all those sort of things, becoming a produce manager, then becoming a bakery manager, and just seeing what it was like.
The bakery stuff was interesting.
Yeah, the bakery stuff was,
because you've always been this early morning guy.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's just been since day dot?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the bakery definitely.
So for those of you who don't know Lloydie, a sleep in for Lloydie is like 5 a.m.
Yeah, definitely. The bakery, I guess, the good thing when you're a manager a lot of the time is you can create your own hours. So I started working security as a casual job, so I could move my hours about at the bakery, so I could pick up the security hours and work on weekends. So I ended up moving myself a lot of the time to be, 12 till or midnight till 9 o'clock, which then enabled me to do security on the weekend, and also, as time progressed, also enabled me to train martial arts during the day. So I could, I'd started doing martial arts at night time, in the traditional club area, doing Muay Thai and doing Zendukai and that at night. But then as time progressed, I could then, go and train during the day. So by moving that roster, I could fit in working in the bakery, then going to the gym and training during the day, and then going and doing security at night.
So you were not a live to work guy, you were a work to live guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Now the martial arts side of things is one thing we connect on.
Yeah.
So you were doing Zendukai back in the late 80s?
Probably 89, I think.
And that was some of the original Brisbane clubs.
Yeah, it was with Raiders.
And then you would have started the Muay Thai not much after it sort of got introduced. Yeah, it was part of Bob Jones' martial arts.
It was very much the beginning. I remember my instructor, I don't think was, that wasn't his passion. His passion was Zendukai. But, one of my friends at Coles, he was a cleaner.
Because, how did you get into it?
Yeah, well, my friend at Coles, Frosty, he was the cleaner there. And we always got along, and he was telling me about Muay Thai, and he'd just started and he'd already been doing Zendukai, and he got into it. And, I thought it sounded really cool. I'd done a little bit of Taekwondo and Judo when I was younger, but not really seriously. And I really liked the idea of not having forms or katas that you had to learn, that you could just go in and spar and learn techniques. So, I jumped on board, and, we had a really good, strong club at Beenleigh until our instructor decided to follow a career with policing in New South Wales, so he left. And at that stage, most of us that trained together, that were called the Beanley Connection at that stage, moved up to Blood Axe to train with Malcolm Anderson. So then we, moved to Blood Axe and trained up there.
So you kept that going until the late 90s, probably?
Yeah, about 20 years.
And you were doing, so you also switched into a little bit of the Filipino sort of stuff?
Yeah,
that appealed to you as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Just because of that free-flowing aspect as well?
I think after a long time with Blood Axe and Muay Thai, I had started working at CAP, and then I moved into, I guess, a senior role at CAP, and I didn't want to mix up my enjoyment with my work. And there was a lot of people, at CAP that had come from that Zendukai background. So I thought it was easier for me to go and start training in another system rather than to stay there and put up with just some of the general rubbish that would go on back then between people because of where I was working and my position there. So I chose to follow and start training in different styles.
Yeah.
So I went to progressive martial arts where they taught a really wide variety at the time. I think most other clubs were focused on one or two styles, but at progressive, they really taught a wide variety of martial arts. So they were teaching JKD, were teaching Thai boxing, Kali, Eskrima, Savate. There was a huge variety, and I always stayed up with Muay Thai and kept doing that, but also was lucky enough to explore Junfan and JKD and all those different styles of martial arts. And I just really enjoyed the flow aspect and learning, I guess, more about martial arts and how I could apply different techniques to different situations. So I really enjoyed that period.
So two things out of there. Number one, so we were saying, again, off air, you were doing probably Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, early 90s?
Yeah.
93, 94?
With Machados.
And that was, back then, it was still, like you just said, there was, it's just a bit of cuddling. What's the practicality of all this? Now it's the most practiced martial art in the world. Is there ever that sort of thing where you go, why did this keep going with this? Like it was really in its infancy.
Yeah.
And Progressive was one of the first clubs in Brisbane to really embrace it. So it's interesting how you were there doing that when that all started. But the second thing, did you notice that, because we used to have these conversations about, using Muay Thai and security as compared to all the, more arts that are more virtuosity. Did you find that the stuff that you were learning at Progressive was actually maybe assisting more out in the field than the Muay Thai stuff?
Yes.
Not to bag the Muay Thai, as I love Muay Thai, but the flowing aspect of it and all these different options that you create.
Yeah, definitely. I guess with the BJJ and Progressive, like you said, was one of the first places to do it through the Inasano Academy, and with Machados, they had already formed a strong bond there. So we were training with people like that. Back then, they'd come over and do seminars. The seminar scene was huge, I guess, in the 90s.
Progressive is still around now.
Yeah, very strong now, and they still, Cookie's still there, and she's an amazing instructor. And, it's just the whole environment there is just a really cool environment. But I guess watching it develop and change, over that period of time, like one of my friends, Jim, was big on, BJJ back then, and had come from that sort of background. And I remember, we'd always have great sparring sessions standing up, but then suddenly I'd be flying through the air wondering what was happening. The next thing, he'd be on top of me, and then we'd carry on for about another half an hour until we were both red in the face and could hardly breathe. But, it was just another aspect, and I guess that really woke me up to the way you could combine different martial arts, and just looking at that and thinking, wow, this is something that I do need to think about. And I do think, at the time when it was really growing, a lot of people wanted to take everybody to ground, and especially in the street situation, which I had seen in the security application didn't work. I'd seen certain people that we'd worked with that thought, they'd take everybody to ground, and suddenly you take somebody in the ground in a room and everybody's standing around you, and lay the boot in. So there's not really the place for that. The skills are super applicable. The close quarters stuff's amazing, and being able to restrain people is really cool. But actually taking them to the ground and trying to put an arm bar on somebody isn't what you want to be doing at a nightclub or something.
So the security side of things, to touch on that, that's obviously where we met. As I said off air, you were there for my first ever shift, which I think was early '94. And then you were there in my last shift, which was 2012. So you started in the pubs and clubs.
Yep.
So my first shift was the Manly Hotel. God bless the place. Let's not go back there. And then obviously the concerts and festivals, because the company we were working for, that was our thing.
Yeah.
Was that something that, and again, it just snowballed for you, and because you started doing all the traveling stuff, so you were doing that Gympie Music Muster, with Splendor in the Grass, like you said, you're still involved with the Folk Festival after all these years. What was the attraction to that over standing on a door in a nightclub 6 nights a week?
Yeah, I think how it all started was we were training at Blood Axe with Malcolm, and he just came up and it might have been during class, just during conversation, and asked if anybody was interested in doing some work at a concert that was coming up, which was Livid.
Yeah.
I believe it was probably 1994. And he was just asking if anybody was interested, and if we were, just to, let him know and come in and go for an interview for Contemporary Artist Protection at that stage. So I thought, what, you get paid to watch music? What the hell? So I jumped into it purely to be able to go to concerts for free. And, like you said, it was amazing to actually be paid to work at concerts that, you'd wanted to go to for years and probably weren't in a financial position to do it. But to get paid to go to those concerts and to work at such iconic and amazing events.
Because we were in the golden era, Festival Hall, and then, going through that late 90s and 2000s, there was a festival on every weekend.
I think I worked out at one stage, I was saying like 14 touring festivals a year we were doing, as well as Festival Hall, River Stage, and all those. And, between them, they'd have a show either, once every second week or once a month. So by the time you put the touring festivals in with the local festivals at River Stage and Festival Hall, or there might be something at the Tivoli, or a green event at a skate park with Smash, like we had those skate sort of gigs as well. There was always something going on. So we were really busy. And I guess working in nightclubs, as you mentioned, or in hotels at Manly, after a while, you're training 7 days a week, you just would get to that point where you get that frustrated with the unduly intoxicated people every night coming up, dealing with the same thing every night, that I just said, I already have another full-time job as a manager. I'm enjoying my training. I just need to pull myself out of that hotel space, which, especially when you're married or in a relationship, it pulls on that as well. So I pulled myself out of that, and as you said, just focused on events, and it just opened up a whole new world, because Suncorp Stadium was just about to be redeveloped. So it went from being, a venue that...
So that was 2001?
Yeah, so a venue that only had, some football being played there occasionally, to suddenly, probably the biggest venue in Brisbane, to having, I think it was like 47 events a year or 52 events a year or something. So it just became this huge thing. And by the time you put in Suncorp, then your touring festivals, as you said, we're going to the muster. So you go up to muster 2-3 weeks, you'd have Big Day Out, Livid, there was Soundwave. There were so many iconic events, Byron Arts Festival, Summerfield Days, Future Music, there were Park Life. There was just event after event. So to be able to do that during that period of time, and it was like you're getting paid to work with your mates. Like I think most of us would have turned up specifically for the concerts for free. I don't think it mattered that we got paid when it was a concert. Some of the other stuff, definitely.
It was funny, like, and I'm sure you were the same, like when you started working for that company, it didn't click, and obviously there wasn't internet or anything to do your research. I got dipped into that company, my brother knew the then manager, and then didn't have an interview, just got told, sign here, you're hired. But it didn't, and much I liked music, yet you went, oh, you do that, and then you do that. So I was like, how good is this? Like, it's the same thing. Like, you're getting all these bands that you just standing there and go, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. Do you, that glory days, I guess you'd say, of the security industry, do you miss it?
Oh, 100%. And I think one of the big things that made us so strong was that a lot of us came from martial arts backgrounds. So
Absolutely.
A lot of us trained together, had similar experience. A lot of us probably had similar ideas on different things. It was definitely a different industry back then, with everybody being so interconnected, especially when the company was smaller. It grew into a massive business, but initially, it was very tight when we were just doing Festival Hall and probably Livid and just those small.
And there was crews, wasn't there?
Yeah,
there was definitely. And I mean, like, even to this day, like our old boys we brought up late last year, which you're the one that mainly puts that together. There's still that connection, and some of us in that group haven't worked. Well, I haven't worked for like 11 years. Some are longer, but there's still that.
There's that bond. What we went through together. I think the good times that we had, and regardless of what it is, that's always my focus. Focus on the positive, focus on the good times, and try and push the rest out of your mind, and to celebrate that. And I think specifically with the old boys group, that's what makes that, is that, it's a group of guys that work together during a specific period when, those concerts were huge. There was nothing bigger than Big Day Out.
Oh, and there were so many hours. Yeah. So we would do and then saying to my kids, Big Day Out wasn't one day. Big Day Out was a week.
Yeah.
But just, this is again, like in training, I talk how much volume is important. Like, you got to get that volume and that time. Yeah. The amount of experience, and this is, like you said, like the amount that, you've been out of the industry or we've been out of the industry, but the hours that we were putting in every weekend. So we would do a show and 12 hours would be just very normal.
Yeah.
So you're doing that every weekend, sometimes twice a weekend. We were seeing each other more than we were seeing our family. That's like when we were, and then we'd be straight back in the office on Monday, getting ready for the next week. And I always remember, like, when Big Day Out was our biggest one, it'd be, we'll just get through this, and then we'll have a break. It got to the point 5 years after that, it was just, and then we got that, and then we got that, and then we got that, and then football season starts, and then soccer season starts. So, just the hours of experience that we were getting probably compared to other people.
And I think the variety, with Cap in particular, with our managing director, he was so incredibly smart and ahead of his time on the systems that he put in place, and that's what really made us, we were already doing some of the concert work, but that's what really made us stand out between his management and his ideas and concepts that were new and weren't being utilised. Everybody else was trying to look like police. We were wearing T-shirts, or then, slowly changed to high-vis shirts. But initially we looked different to every company. We were based in that entertainment, strongly based in that entertainment concept, doing nightclubs and then, into the sporting events as well. But we were, during that period, we were, the best security company in Australia working in that area. And I think the bond that was built with those people over that time and the things we did and the hours, like you said, we'd go from a concert to a rodeo to a football game
to a high profile corporate event, to this and that. And I think that's the you're right, that's the thing that made us so good at what we did. But that's probably also carried on into other parts of our life as well. So moving into that, you finish up at Cap.
Yep.
Time was done. Now, That was
2020.
2020.
COVID.
Jesus, 4 years ago already. Now you're doing something that a lot of people would say is really different, but to you, it's probably a natural progression.
Yeah.
So what's your thing? So what's your role now?
So I now work for Sea Shepherd Australia. I'm the remote marine debris campaigner. So, working through all the festivals, as we spoke about earlier, we would see these volunteers and wonder what they were and why people would volunteer instead of getting paid, especially at the major events, and just seeing that over the years. And then I guess one of the times that I had holidays, which as we mentioned, we never really had any time off. And we always, historically, I took time off from my job in retail to work security. And when we're at CAP, we wouldn't have time to take time off because we'd always have a festival. So it was quite rare. I remember one particular time I took a couple of weeks off to go and do an off-road triathlon on the Great Ocean Road. And while we were there, took my kids down, had a motorhome, and I'd heard of Sea Shepherd at Woodford Folk Festival. One of the Marcus was always talking about Sea Shepherd. So, I'm going, they're at Williamstown, let's go have a look. And I guess it just worked out lucky that when we went there, it was the end of Operation Zero Tolerance, which was part of the Southern Ocean Defence Campaign to protect the whales. They'd just come in. So there was 3 ships at the Southern Operations Base at Williamstown. So they were bought so you could go in and do tours. So I turned up with the kids. We parked the van up, went up, had a look around. I thought, what's this? And then, they had these volunteers there, and they were taking people for tours of the ship to tell them about the work that Sea Shepherd does. So we jumped on that, and it just seemed to really click with me and the kids in particular. And, it stayed in the back of my mind for a long time. And then when I got back, and I thought, you know what? I've been working 7 days a week. As long as I can remember doing multiple jobs, I'd really like to do something to give back. And I really like this idea of this Sea Shepherd thing. So I wouldn't mind having a go at that. So I started following Sea Shepherd on social media. So I guess Facebook had come out by then. Started following them and saw they had some different events, and one of them was like a beach cleanup sort of event. So I thought, I can do this with the kids. So my wife and my 3 daughters and I all went, and we went to that, and we sort of all seemed to enjoy it. It was something we were doing as a family. I wasn't away working, so that was a bonus for me. And just it really seemed to click in. And then at the same time, I was doing, ultra running. I was doing off-road triathlon. I was doing some obstacle course racing, just, trying all different sports because I destroyed my knees, so had moved away from martial arts a bit because I had not stretched or warmed up or done any of the stuff that we're told to. So I wanted to look at some other stuff to still keep healthy. So through that, I decided to start looking at plant-based diets and change my diet to do that, to try and heal better, to push myself to do these 50K ultra runs and these day-long events or half-day events and that. So I'd moved to a plant-based diet, and then I found out that, Sea Shepherd, any of their events or if you were involved in the boats and that they were vegan as well. So even though I had changed from a health perspective, and I struggled because, as you know, I'd eaten a lot of meat before then and would rock up to sign on with half a chicken every day and I'd demolish it.
This was always the thing. Like, you were a bourbon drinking, chicken eating. Like, we'd go out. We'd go out to dinner at shows, and you'd be having. And then you see this change, and it's always ironic because clearly you've always been a disciplined guy, but your conscience is clear because the place that you take us, we always go to for our old boys catch-ups, is probably arguably the biggest steakhouse in Brisbane. We're all having these thick steaks, and Lloydie has a very intimate relationship with the chef and like picking out everything. I can't have that. I can't have that. Or you just go with a bowl of chips. But it was sort of something that just naturally progressed. So it wasn't prompted by Sea Shepherd.
No.
Sea Shepherd definitely played a part in the final product.
Yeah, 100%. So it was prompted purely. I tried quite a few diets: high fat, low carb, keto. I tried lots of different diets because I was doing, I was training 7 days a week, as well as working 7 days a week. So I think, training is really good for your sanity. So I would do that just so I could switch off for a while, as we were talking about before. So I had played with all these diets, and, although a lot of these diets would be good for weight loss and different things, none of them ever felt healthy. So you would always, it'd get you some of the results you wanted, but I wanted something that was more, and that's how I stumbled onto the plant-based diet, because I was doing the research, and, the world's strongest man was plant-based, the best ultra runners were plant-based, all these amazing athletes were plant-based. So I thought, don't know how I'm going to go with this. This is going to be a struggle, because I'm going from eating, 2 steaks a day and a chicken every second day to nothing, and to ditching dairy and everything. So I changed overnight, because I'm very driven. So if I want to do something, I can. So I just chose overnight. I'm going to commit to this for a couple of months and see how I go. And it did, and the changes were straight away.
And how long have you been vegan?
12 years. So it's been 12 years now. So
I guess if we were to have a talk like you're in rehab, have you ever had a slip up or a near slip up?
No.
Have you ever woken up one day and go, fuck, I could
No, I think what changed that for me is I made sure that I started watching some documentaries on the negative side of consuming animals. And I think once you watch a few of those, it really gets you thinking about all the side effects of that sort of lifestyle, the stuff that can lead to, and the health aspects of the other. So it really turned me, and because, I'd been a smoker, I'd given up smoking the same way. I'd been able to give up quite a few things the same way. So it was a known process of, I can do this until I don't. And I just choose not to, because I have a lot of concerns about the future for my children. And I believe that, we can all make a difference. So by my following a plant-based diet, I believe that's my contribution to making a difference in that area.
Excellent. And it's just a habit now.
It's just a habit. It's just easy. At the end of the day, it's a really easy diet to follow. When you go out, it is harder. Like I said, you might just end up having chips, but you don't eat out often a lot. So I don't think it's any big sacrifice. It's for the future. It's to make things better, and it's what I believe is the right thing to do.
Okay. So that was more than 7 minutes, but but we'll move on to, because we'll definitely come back to all this stuff. 3 reasons you get out of bed every morning. And when I say out of bed every morning, I should change that. Out of bed really fucking early every morning.
I guess I love the early morning, working.
Why?
Working in CAP and all those places, it's quiet. The world's peaceful. You can go outside. It's silent. There's nothing like seeing the sunrise. So I used to, I really got into that for a long time. Would be go out, find somewhere to watch sunrises.
You're an early to bed guy then?
Obviously. Yeah, 9 o'clock. Yeah. Except when we're working, that was always the funny thing, that we'd be working and we'd get home at 3 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd still be up at 5 thinking I'd slept in. And a lot of that came to, when I was training all the time, starting classes at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., in the morning. So you would always have that. So I think that you just have to forego that sleep and catch up when you can. But I definitely go to bed early. So definitely early. But I just think that the morning at the end of the day, it's the most beautiful time of the day. You can go and be the only person at the beach and watch the beach. The world is just to you. And from a work perspective, it's easy just to focus on what you need to do before the emails come in, the text messages come in. You just get so far ahead on your day that the rest of the day, if you can, I find that in that first 2 to 3 hours, like even now, I'll often be up and just start working at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock.
As soon as I wake up. Do you find you more motivated to work early?
100%. 100%.
So like after midday, you'll just get that. It'll just be
after midday, it's just sort of, you wind down. I have a lot of meetings. I do a lot of talking to people nowadays. I guess I did before. just different clients. But I'll organise most of the meetings in the afternoon so I can just focus on what I need to do, because a lot of it is logistics. So I'll just be organising remote cleanups, having conversations with ranger groups, Parks Australia, or just different stakeholders or different people I think that we could work with. I'm really big on collaboration, and I really believe that working together is a massive strength. You know, the more people you can work together, and I really enjoy connecting people. And a lot of the time there will be no benefit for myself or Sea Shepherd, but it's the right thing to do. So you put people together, and then, you know, sooner or later that comes back and they put you together with somebody that pays off. So I think it's really important to be a conduit and to work in with everybody and see who you meet, and then, you know, say, well, where could that person fit in? Well, they do this. Well, this might fit in here.
Yeah.
So, I really believe in that part of the work too. Yeah.
What's number two?
Number two, family, obviously. Family's huge for me because we just sacrifice so much for our family. And I think a lot of the time, I guess our family sacrifices so much for us.
Well, this is what I was going to say again. So many tangents you and I could go on. We spent, when we were working, so much time away.
Yeah.
Do you feel now, obviously you can't get that time back, but is catching up something that you try to work on now, or what? How would you word it?
I don't think I'll ever catch up. And I think that's the thing, you know, we focus on our work and we believe we're doing it for our family, but then the more we work, the more we're away from our family. So while we're working, because we're not home anyway.
So without getting too philosophical, if you were to do it again, would you have worked so much when, I guess, the kids were young, or would you have tried to space it out? Or is it, it's a hard question, it's a hard question for me to ask, because I was the same.
Yeah.
You know, like Lila and I were so young and we're off working all the time, and Helen, at the point she said, I feel like a single mum. What is, you know, what would you do that little bit different now?
I think I would try and prioritise some of the big stuff that we missed out on. You know, we missed out on so much, just, you know, simple things that I now can do, you know, like my daughter. I take my daughter to school every day because I work from home. Officially, I start at 8:30. I've already been up since 4 o'clock working. It's a 5-minute drive down the street. I never got to do that, you know. So I am doing stuff that I wasn't able to do before. I still am a workaholic, and I guess that's just me. I still, you know, I'm always working and thinking about different ways I can achieve things.
Yeah.
But I don't believe I'll ever get back that time. And Kerry's the same as Helen. You know, she raised our children as a single mother and did an amazing job. And we weren't just there, but we were, you know, we were supplying the income that enabled us to, you know, to be able to live that way, and to do those things that we were able to do. But yeah, I think that sacrifice is something that we never get back. But I really do try, and, you know, if I could think of things that I could do with my children, and I'm even working on it now, where I'm trying to work how I can spend more time with my children until my daughters have now moved out, you know, and you start to go, oh, well, what do I do now? You know, they've now moved out. So, you know, you're still trying to be relevant in their lives and do what you can, and sort of still lead by example and say, you know, like, I've got everything that I've got from working.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is my focus now, and my focus is to leave the world better than I found it.
And it shifts, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Number 3?
Probably music.
Okay.
Yeah, I love music. And, like, as I mentioned,
favourite all-time band?
I think David Bowie would still be my favourite artist. But I think the one thing that working in those festivals gave us was a very eclectic variety of music, because we go from country music to punk shows to metal shows to pop shows, and I love music in all those different sort of genres.
Yeah, same.
And, you know, one of the things that I really enjoy with the work that I do is I get to work a lot with the young people in Arnhem Land. So I'm really discovered a lot of First Nations music that I wouldn't have discovered any other way.
That's a good
that
point.
the Rangers have put me onto, like the Garangali Band, East Journey, the Yindi, because they're all from that area. King Stingray, they're all from that area that I work.
So
in-
where were you? So can you think of a moment working where you're standing at a stage with a band and just in your head going, I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah, Sex Pistols at Festival Hall. So I guess it was a filthy, dirty, rotten Lacree tour, and I guess at that stage no one thought they'd ever play again. So to be there, you know, in the barrier and see that, and have, I guess, Johnny Rotten getting up on stage, abusing the crowd for sitting down, not dancing after he spent all this time on a plane getting here.
Yeah,
I think that was, you know, that was a band I'd always wanted to see. You know, I had a list of bands that I wanted to see. Human League at V-Fest was another one that I'd always wanted to see. And I guess seeing Silverchair's first ever concert at Festival Hall, which was one of their first ever concerts, and I was on the mixer, stand up there with their mums who were their managers at that stage.
So for those of you who don't know, if you get the mixer or front of house position at a show, it's literally like you are getting paid to watch the show. You stand there, it's all fenced in, and you just fucking enjoy the show.
Yeah,
it's a top spot. It's a top spot.
So definitely, you know, some of the highlights there.
Yeah. Okay. Really good. Now question number 3. 2 guilty pleasures that you have.
2 guilty pleasures. Definitely catching up with the old boys is definitely a guilty pleasure, and drinking too much.
I was going to say, why is that a guilty pleasure? But then you went, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So it's the only time I go out. So I don't go to hotels or any of those things, and it is my only time that I go out with my friends. So I guess that's a really big guilty pleasure, focusing on that. Getting out there.
And we're always the last bastards left.
Yeah, somehow it always happens that we're the last ones. But I think, that's really a guilty pleasure. That's probably the biggest one. I love watching movies, so I've always found that a good way to switch off. So that's probably another thing. That I loved. You know, just sitting, just sitting in the lounge room watching a movie, switching off for a while, trying not to think about work. And just
do you find that really hard to do?
I find it very hard to do, and now since mobile phones come in, it's even worse.
Because this is the thing too, like, if you'd have tried to do the Sea Shepherd stuff you do now when you were working cab, it wouldn't have been possible, because so many of the places you go now are completely off grid. We were talking about it at our last catch up. Yeah. You know, like I said, what if someone goes down? Like, you know, what do you do? Like, you know, you have a sat phone or whatever, or because you are literally in the middle of nowhere in some of these spots. What's the most remote place you've been?
Yeah, I think Jewel Pan at the moment, which is 2.5 hours from Gove.
So where's Gove?
It's in Arnhem Land, so up at the top of the Northern Territory.
So if something goes down, how many hours are you from, like, a hospital or civilization?
Probably 2 hours. Depends how fast you drop. It's all on dirt track. So, you know, the track this year, when we went back in 2023, was much better than it had been historically. So I think we got there in 2 hours easy, where previously it had been 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So we got there pretty quick, but it's remote. It's all unclosed country, which is one of the privileges of doing the job I do. So we work on closed country. What that means is that you can't go there unless you're a traditional owner. So we go to these super remote areas and remove plastic pollution from those areas. It's washed up globally from around the world, including Australia.
Do you just go there? And I mean, like, you know, there is, I'm sure, a big difference between going to the sunny coast beach compared to going to somewhere like that on the beach. Do you just go, this is what First Nations people would have been living like 100 plus years ago, or this is what Coolum would have been 200 plus years ago?
Yeah, definitely. Those places.
Does it smell different? Does it feel different?
It's 100% different. It's amazing. Again, it leads back to why I like to get up early. So when I'm there, I'm the first person up. But
you're the first person up no matter what you fucking are.
But to get to work alongside those First Nations rangers and hear their stories and, you know, just try to understand the knowledge that they have, and just accessing those places. Like, I've run community cleanups since 2017, I think, on the Gold Coast every month So I pick up a lot of community rubbish at our free monthly cleanups across Australia. So I've done those and picked up those rubbish, but that's really, your single-use plastics you take away, your water bottles, all those sort of items are mainly what you're removing nowadays in those sort of cleanups, where when we go to remote, we're going to beaches that have, around a tonne a kilometre, so just the beach is literally covered in plastic. So, I think the worst we've had is 2 tonnes per kilometre of plastic that we've removed.
And people would be
by hand.
So blown away that somewhere so remote is still effectively so polluted.
Yeah, it's 2 hours away from the nearest city or town.
Yet it's just got shit everywhere.
Covered by plastic. It should be pristine. There are sections of the beach that are pristine, and that's what it should look like. And that is one of the big things that I've seen, like talking to some of the elders on country, and that, you're talking, what was it like? This was such an idyllic place when I was a child. Timmy Burrawunga, who's a manager of Timaru Aboriginal Corporation, he was saying that, when he grew up, it was pristine, but now he's worried what he's handing on to his children because it's covered in plastic. It's now covered in plastic. They still traditionally hunt, but their food source is eating that plastic. They're eating that. The food source is no longer coming in.
Food would taste it.
Yeah. Well, turtles, dugongs, whatever, fish are all eating that plastic, so that plastic inside them, but there's not even the variety there anymore because the turtles can't come up and nest because of the plastic on the beach, which is one of the really big positives we've been able to see, is that when we remove that plastic from the beach, when we come back the next day, even last year, we come back the next day, and as we clean, we could see more turtles were able to come up on the beach behind us, and the beach would just be covered in turtle tracks, where when we started there in 2018, it had been a historical turtle nesting beach, but there was rarely any turtle tracks on it at all. And as we've cleaned it every year, we've successively seen more and more turtles return just from evidence of their footprints.
Crazy.
To this year was the most we'd ever seen.
And it's funny probably because you're making all this change that not many people can see.
Yeah. Well, I think
they can't see it now, but maybe in a generation, hopefully they'll see it.
Yeah, and I think if people could see the amount of debris on these beaches,
How much would you? So obviously, because you're so remote, you got to pack this stuff and drive it out.
Yep.
Do you weigh it?
So we, as a rule, generally, we sort of count 10% of what we remove, so we can tell what those products are. So every day, at the end of each day, we'll pull off stuff we remove. If we move a tonne, so if we remove 1,000 kilos, we'll pull 100 kilos aside, sort it out, categorise it, break it down into the different categories.
Wow.
Sometimes we'll do brand audits and we'll say, who can we pick out? Oh, here's Danone, here's Johnson & Johnson, here's, Coca-Cola, here's Pepsi. So we break it down, so we have a breakdown of that as well as doing that. So, and the volunteers, and again, you can't pay people to do what our volunteers do. They work 12 hours a day, so we start at sunrise. So we'll normally be heading out onto the beach at 6. We'll come back at 6, and then we'll count. We might count till 7. And then at 5 o'clock we're loading cars. So suddenly that 12-hour day is a 14-hour day.
Yeah.
So we're counting and sorting for that whole time. And then we go there to get. Our biggest thing is to get as much done as we can in the time we are on country. So we sort of, we're all focused on, pushing ourselves further and, doing what we can, because there is no shelter. It's the Northern Territory. It's hot. You have beautiful ocean that you can't swim in because of crocodiles, but there's no bathing, there's no washing, there's no air conditioning, there's no anything.
You would be ripe by the time you got back.
So you might splash a bit of water over a rock pool on yourself, but there's no going in the water. So it is definitely, total remote living, but it's amazing when you wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock and watch the sunrise across this pristine ocean, or you sit and look at the stars at 8 o'clock where there's no light for 2.5 hours, and you can just see, I guess what people throughout history and the traditional owners have seen there for thousands of years, can just look up and think this is the same sky that those people see. That and then you hear their stories relating to I guess the song spirals and that sort of connection, and you really think how privileged we are to be in those places.
100%. I think that's, I just couldn't imagine, like, you're seeing this, I said, like, someone sat here 2,000 years ago and saw this same story. So I'm saying, that's crazy. All right. One thing you bought that has literally made you happy every day after.
Push bike.
I was going to say it can't be bourbon.
No, definitely push bikes. So I think, like I've ridden push bikes since I was little. It's your first form of freedom. It lets you go out and explore. And I think that's a big part of my nature is I've always wanted adventure, whether it be adventure with your mates, working at festivals, adventure through scouting, adventure through getting on your bike and riding to the nearest lake for a swim. A push bike has always been that mode of transport to me. So I still ride road bike and mountain bike. But there's no more fun than pelting down a hill on a mountain bike in the bush.
As we were saying beforehand, I love doing it. That when I'm on there, hands on the bars, all I can do is look in front, and I don't have time to think about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a special thing, and to get into it isn't expensive. You can get hooked up in it, and it gets expensive really quickly. But just riding is so simple. I enjoyed teaching my kids to ride. That was I guess a big highlight. Just seeing my kids' faces as they learnt to ride. And it's a really good life skill. It just shows, I guess it's like walking. It's something that you learn through your failures how to do it better and better and better.
It's crazy the amount of kids these days, like teenage kids, that either don't own a bike or have never ridden a bike.
Yeah.
And like I said, when we were young, that's just what you did. I was breaking my neck to get on one.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Let's go, we won't speed up, but there's ones I want to get to. Well, here we go. There's plenty of this, probably more than one thing. One thing that everyone thought you were crazy doing, but you did it anyway and it paid off.
Yeah, I think one thing recently when I looked at that one, I guess the most recent thing was leaving that crowd control space.
Because you were in a high up role.
Yeah.
And, like I said, very sought after. You're still doing the odd little gig on the side every now and then. But yeah, when a lot of people, because I'll be honest, when I left, I thought this is just what you're going to do. So that must have been, well, not that there was a breaking point, but was just I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I think we went through COVID. And everybody, there was no work, so
because crowd control, that would have been a very difficult time.
Yeah, so there just wasn't the work available, and then numerous things happened, and it was a really challenging period. And there wasn't that major events work that I loved anymore. And then the business ended up deciding to make me redundant. So I took that offer, and then was approached by, numerous amounts of crowd control companies, risk companies, people in that space to join their business or start my own. And I just took that time and what I'd learnt through COVID and having that time to be at home and reconnecting with nature, especially, getting out, walking in the bush, decided to look at a different path, to turn the corner, leave crowd control behind me and focus on conservation. So,
how was the family with that?
I think they were very grateful. I think that they were very supportive.
Without getting into it probably too much, you were under a great deal of stress in that previous job.
Yeah, it was very stressful, and I guess I was always away from home. And even though I'm away now, I don't feel it's as bad. My phone used to ring 24/7, as we know.
Oh, yeah.
Phones would be ringing all the time. Emails would be backing up. Clients would be needing something tomorrow, which now, the events I work on are much more spaced out.
So there's still a little bit like when you go away to those places that are like off grid and that phone's not ringing at all. Are you used to that now?
I love it.
So you've managed to switch off?
Yeah, definitely with that.
How long did that take?
Took a while. But I think I learnt that through COVID.
Yeah.
Like we'd gone through that quiet time. we'd gone through.
Oh, yeah.
You
So
know,
you were weaned into it.
it was sort of weaned, and it was just the end product. So, you know, I thought, what do I want to do? I guess was the first thing I thought. And I thought, if I could do anything, what would I do? You know, just put it to myself. You know, I guess I went, if money was no object, what would I do? And I decided that I wanted to be a park ranger. So I thought, okay, so how do I go about that? So I thought, okay, let's just start doing this volunteering stuff. More of what I'd heard of when I'd been volunteering with Sea Shepherd for a long time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and start volunteering with natural areas. So I started doing that. And then I met a guy there who I'd met at one of my beach cleans, who I knew did the natural areas stuff, one of my mates, Jim. And, you know, I knew he had worked in that space. I reached out to him and he said, look, I've actually put a list together of what you should do if you want to become a ranger. I've worked with all these rangers, you know, and it listed, you know, do a chainsaw course, do an ACDC course, you know, do a firefighting course, you know. So I started ticking those off, did the chainsaw course, did the ACDC course, joined the Rural Fire Brigade, and then started doing more and more natural areas, started reaching out to people writing or who had books on natural areas, you know, and then just found out that by volunteering, suddenly I had access to these people that you couldn't pay to access, you know, and I remember writing to one guy who's got this like #1 native plant book in Australia, and just writing to him and saying, hey, I want to buy your book. Saw this as your email address, couldn't find it in the bookshop. I saw you live in Beenleigh. Where do you live? So, you know, I'd go around this guy's house and buy it. And, you know, then Glenn was super generous with his time. And then I ended up going seed collecting with him and him teaching me about some of the plants locally. And then my friend Jim was giving me more and more of his time and teaching me different stuff. And then I was doing the natural areas, volunteering and just learning and going, this is so cool. And then with Jim, I was also doing some trail building as a volunteer, so making mountain bike and hiking trails in Daisy Hill. And then we had Trailworks, which is a company that does that, come along to do some work there. And then I started talking to Pete, who owned Trailworks, and just said, you know, I wasn't working at the moment. I was having a gap year. And I was basically, you know, volunteering 4 days a week. So it's not like I wasn't working. I was just working as a volunteer. And he said, oh, look, be interested in coming and doing this? So I started doing that 3 or 4 days a week, and then ended up doing that sort of on a casual basis, but, you know, 38, 40 hours a week, trail building across southeast Queensland for a year, which is an amazing job where you get paid to hike in nature every day and ride bikes and build mountain bike trails and just work with heaps of crazy people, which is really cool. Just people that have similar beliefs in regards to nature and loving being out in the environment, and they haven't taken traditional paths.
Well, because one thing we were saying, and this is something that I thought of when we were over the road prior, people have this idea of someone who is a conservationist or works for Sea Shepherd or is involved in something to do in that field. There would be a pigeonhole person, and it's anything but, isn't it? Like you were saying on these cleanups, people that go and work off-grid with you or volunteering, they are just, you know, 90% of them are like, I did not think you'd be doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I think with volunteering, and especially the people that volunteer with Sea Shepherd, I think if you're passionate about something, that's a huge difference. And I think no matter what you're passionate about, you should really try volunteering in that area, because it opens up so many pathways. Like I got the job as a trail builder, which I loved, through volunteering. I got this job at Sea Shepherd through volunteering. I was offered, after I signed the contract with Sea Shepherd, I was offered 3 ranger positions, which I got through volunteering. You know, so I learnt to really appreciate volunteering as a pathway.
This is back for when we were working, how valuable networking and getting to know people was. So I guess it's that little, you know, that same sort of thing, because a lot of people don't do that anymore, do they?
No.
Unless you're paying me, I'm not doing it.
And it's really worth doing. I recommend to anybody, regardless of what you want to do, to find where you want to work or what you want to be involved in. and volunteering can lead you to that place because it opens up connections to people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. Like I've met so many amazing people, and one thing that working at CAP always taught us about was that networking and looking after the
100%.
clients. So that's
there's still
paid off for me.
There's still clients and contacts that I'm still in touch with. You know, and again, been out of the industry for so long. All right. Ooh. 4 things you can't live without. Inanimate or animate?
Music.
Yep.
Music. Love music. You know, wake up, like I said, wake up early. First thing I do, chuck the AirPods in and start listening to music. So I like music. I find it can lift you up or calm you down. So as I mentioned, very eclectic, you know, like listen to some old music normally in the morning and then move into upbeat music throughout the day.
Okay.
So just love that music, love vinyl records, get the record player out, probably have too many bourbons all the time. More records come on.
I think that sometimes when you've messaged me in the past when you were just
chilling out the records. So I definitely think that natural areas, spending time in natural areas, I can't do without that.
Do you get the heebie-jeebies in, like, if you go into like a big built-up area now? Do you sort of like a bit? I need some space.
I don't like coming back to reality
because can you be in this really remote community? And again, there's way bigger cities than Brisbane. But would you have that? Do you have that little climatizing period?
Yeah, definitely. So I always love coming back to my family. You know, like I miss my kids whenever I'm away. But to come back from those remote communities where you've dealt with, 12, 20 people, that's been it. That's the only people you've been around. You've been in these areas where you're literally by yourself. You know, when we're picking up rubbish, we're normally working as a group, but you're working individually picking up rubbish. So you're really by yourself and in your own head. And then when you get back to reality and you're at an airport and there's thousands of people, it's very much a culture shock there. So, getting into those natural areas is super important. Number three, coffee. I think I love coffee. So, we have a coffee machine at home. So, just every morning I get up, put the coffee machine on, make coffee for my wife. We have coffee together every morning. It's just a ritual. So I think that's super important.
And that would be one of those little things
that we never got to do.
Never. You know, and now it's a thing.
It's part of a daily routine. Yeah, so that, and then I guess my bike, just being able to, choose to get out there on the bike whenever you want. Yeah. It is good, like I try and get out on the bike a couple of days a week.
You're pretty close to Daisy Hill, aren't
you? Yeah, 15 minutes drive. So I'm quite close to quite a few mountain bike parks. So I could just, jump in the car, put the bike on, and off you go.
Yeah, good. Number 7. God, if you weren't doing what you're doing in life right now, what would have been option number 2?
Yeah, definitely a ranger. Like that was what I decided.
But you kind of are.
I was going to do. Yeah, and I think, I thought, what would I do? And like I said earlier, I really focused on learning the skills to be a ranger, and then I was just lucky enough that I'd been volunteering with Sea Shepherd. We'd picked up a grant. I'd worked on a program for 6 months, working casually for Sea Shepherd, and then that led to, there was an opening looking at expanding our remote cleanup program, and I was lucky enough to be successful when I applied for that. So yeah, if it wasn't for that, I would have been a ranger.
Do you look back now, and I mean, like, everything we do shapes where we're going.
Yeah.
But do you look back now and go, I wish I'd have started this 20 odd years ago? But then, like, how long?
No, we wouldn't have had the experiences what we had.
And Sea Shepherd wouldn't have been around.
No.
Like park rangers. Well, park rangers when we were kids was a very different sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I think it was good timing, and we had some.
How old is Sea Shepherd?
Amazing. About 45. Wow.
It's only
1977.
There I used the term. It's only become probably popular in the last 20 years.
Yeah, especially in Australia.
Yeah. Would you, if you got an offer now, of, not monetary, but you got an offer to be a park ranger in a really cool area, would there be a deliberation process?
No.
It's just
No, I love doing what
it's
I
not
do.
in the game plan anymore. Okay. Number 8. One time you backed yourself when everything was just saying give up.
Yeah, I can't think of one time, but I think we would go through that a lot with major events. You know, I think one of the really challenging ones from memory was like Big Day Out in about 1994, which was my first time looking after the roster. I'd worked at Big Day Out before, but it was the first time running that roster and, you know, looking, I think one of the supervisors didn't turn up on the day. We had additional positions added in the night before. I think all of us were going around to nightclubs trying to get people to come work for us the next day. And then, you know, like just really doubling down and going, you know what? I'm surrounded by my mates, all my friends. We'll get through this if we all pull together. And we did, and we got through it. And that was repeated many times.
The thing I was saying to, I was just saying it to Madison before, and the guys know in here, and the events that like I do now, martial arts, our capacity to just wing it.
Yeah.
This is just going to work out.
Yep.
Where we'll just do this. Like I work with people, and you'd work with people who are still to this day very boom. And I remember like Paulie giving me run sheets and going, "I'm going to give you this. I'll never actually have to. I'm going to give you this. You won't have to do anything, but like just to make sure that we had that capacity to be able to just go with the flow. Like we weren't a minute by minute kind of group. No. I mean, there were certain things you had to stick to, but it was just like,
adaptability.
We could just figure it out. And again, like there was, as much as I said to Madison as well, as much as we there were times we visibly and audibly got shits with each other.
Oh, 100%.
But we still got through it.
Yeah.
And we still did it. Like we'd have our little fucking explosions at each other and then just carry on. And we just managed to and you'd sit back and like you'd sit on that hill at Parklands having a beer afterwards.
Yep.
And you just go, did we just do that?
Yeah. I think one of the great things at CAP was just being able to work with our mates. Yeah. Especially with having you, me, Hawley and KB all together working. It was just like working with your mates constantly. And yeah, there were bad times, but like all those big day outs, all those events.
We got over it pretty quickly.
We'd have the night before where Hawley would be looking after us and organising stuff. And, I think just knowing that we had that support there from our group and how tight-knit we were in the office, and then our supervisors, like with people like Pete and Woz and Ty and Jamie and all the guys that we catch up with now, I think just knowing we had those support, they were our stage guys, they were our response rovers.
And their ability to wing it when we were winging it, it's like
it just worked.
We don't have 12, you've only actually got 10.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'll make it work.
Yeah. We got through it.
So I think that was pretty good. All right, I've got 2 questions to go. These are probably, and again, an interesting life for you. 3 pieces of advice you give to people finding it hard to not back themselves, but instead back themselves.
I think one is that determination beats talent. Like a lot of the people think I'm not good at a certain thing or I don't pick up as quick on things as other people.
I guess that's the same as the whole hard work beats talent.
Yeah.
Every time.
Well, determination, persistence. I've just learnt over time that I would work with a lot of talented people or meet talented people, whether it be in martial arts, whether it be in running or whatever I did. I would meet these people that were super talented, but they're lazy. They just took on that they were talented and they would be so much better. But over time, those people fall by the wayside. And an example is how I was able to work myself up through Coles, through CAP, through all different areas, from starting with the lowest to the low positions and then working my way up into senior management.
And do you find, because I was pretty much the same, do you find they're the best people in time to
100%.
work with?
100%.
Because they know what it's like. And again, like I said, we had no problem. I always say, like, you had a guard on a back gate who was like need to go to the toilet, instead of like, oh, I need something. Well, you go, mate. I'll stand here. And a lot of the times I was surprised, weren't they? They were like, you go. Give me the pass sheet.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's really important.
Number two?
Number two, I guess, be kind, not only to yourself, but to other people, or be genuine.
Mm-hmm.
I think people see that straight away. So sometimes, especially in regards to backing yourself, if you're genuine, people see that, they feel that you're genuine. And, I've been lucky since leaving the crowd control industry that I did have some of my old clients approach me and ask if I'd work for them on these events. And I believe the only reason was because I was always there, and it didn't matter if it was work or it was non-work. They could just ring me anytime, ask for advice. They knew that I was always going beyond what you would do for a client. Most of my clients became my friends, so I think I had a much bigger buy-in. I never thought of it as just work. I thought of it as trying to make the event as successful as possible. So I would always go out of my way to do the best for our clients. So I think that being kind, just being genuine will get you further.
If you're a nice person, I'll be nice to.
Yeah.
Number three?
Number three, probably, probably not number three.
Okay. They're very, I like that determination beats talent. Because, like I said, pretty much every vocation that you've had, probably say you'd have 3 vocations. You worked from the ground up.
Yeah, 100%.
Number 10, a quote to live by.
Yeah, I like this one. I guess be the change you want to see in the world. Like I thought of quite a few quotes, and there's some really nice quotes. But I think if you want to change stuff, change starts with you. So you can't change everybody. So if you just change yourself and just do what you believe in and show people what you can do, I think you will then start to change people's perception of different ideas.
I know a lot of people will say this and agree or disagree. Do you feel that you being one person doing what you do you feel you're making a difference?
Yeah, I do. I think that...
Because a lot of people would go, oh, one person doesn't matter. Do you feel you're making a difference?
I think people within your networks, you don't have to change people a lot. You don't have to be preachy about it. But I think people see what you're doing, and maybe they rethink getting that takeaway coffee cup, or maybe they rethink and have a salad for lunch.
Sitting here, when I went to give you that bottle of water before, and you went, I won't have water out of a plastic bottle. Again, you were very polite about it and all the rest of it. But I've sat here on and off for the last an hour going, do we get a fucking water fountain instead of like, and again, that's genuine. Do we do something like that? Like, could that just be that little bit of change?
100%.
Like how many bottles of water do we sell here a year?
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, it all goes to landfill. So yeah, I think by just doing what you can, like I've met some amazing people, both in the other careers I've had and nowadays, but like I go and volunteer with Sally, who just does a clean-up every week at Salbudger Creek Bridge, and you meet people through that, you have conversations, and you're just removing that rubbish. And then we have people that walk up to us and have a conversation, and maybe they rethink it. And when I run community cleans on the Gold Coast, people just walk up and start talking to you. So just by me making that change and getting involved with Sea Shepherd and having those conversations, those people rethink some of their choices. Mightn't affect anybody, but you know what? If it changes one person, that's one more person that changes that network, and slowly we will see more and more change.
So you are, how old are you?
56.
Jesus, really? This is something that, I would, for you, I guess to close, this isn't a job, this is a passion.
It's definitely a passion.
And I guess the concept of retiring, you'll be doing something regarding this for many years to come.
Yeah, definitely. I love the job that I do with Sea Shepherd. I'm very privileged
and it's funny because
most people are volunteers. There's only a few of us staff. So to be paid to do this job, it is like a real privilege. And as I mentioned earlier, it just means so much to me to be able to work with First Nations people on country. that's an experience that you can't buy or have anywhere else. So I know that it's changed me a lot. It's just like when I became vegan, it changed. It was a drastic change, and it's been the same working with First Nations people, trying to learn more, to look at things differently.
And the thing I love about you with what you're doing in life, because I will always say, this is a guy who, when I knew him initially, was doing this, and now it's literally polar opposite. You have never once gotten on your soapbox. You've never once preached. You've never once got all righteous. So this is what I choose to do.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, fine. If you don't, that's up to you as well. But this is the direction I'm going. Do you find that sometimes, as I said, probably again to finish, your family's obviously very supportive about this.
Yeah, 100%.
But they still, like, if they make a decision to, one still wants to eat meat or one doesn't want to,
their decision.
That's on them.
100%.
This is what I'm doing.
100%. You can only control yourself, and I think that the people that are preachy about that, there's definitely a space for that. But I think you can change more people by just showing them through your actions.
Influence over authority.
Yeah, 100%.
Look, we could go on for a long time because this intrigues me so much. But look, Grahame Lloyd, thank you so much. We've been friends for a long time. Even though I did steal you. Can you believe, I'm going to say it, 2003,
Yep.
I accidentally threw a tin of his tuna in the bin at Sign-On, which it wasn't an accident, I knew it was his. 21 years later, he is still giving me shit about it, even the fact now he's vegan.
Yeah.
And he reminded me about it at about 20 minutes before the podcast. But regardless of all that, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. For a guy who was nervous about coming on board, no, didn't see it for a second.
Thank you,
mate.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Guys, with what we're doing, keep listening for all our updates, our YouTube channel, our Spotify podcast that we have. Please like, follow, share it around. There'll be more and more episodes coming up. But thank you for listening, and make just that little bit of a change, and you might be surprised how far it goes. Have a great day or night, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Kyl Reber podcast, and thank you for taking the time to listen to another amazing person that is doing amazing things, that is just like you and I, and like you, is capable of greatness. So make sure that you listen to this, take away something from it, and use that to inspire you to back yourself and become something that you could have never dreamed you're possible of becoming. Please make sure you listen to future episodes. Please make sure you follow, like, and share all our channels, because let's get the word out that everybody, everywhere, no matter who they are, is capable of doing some pretty amazing things. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. My name's Kyl Reber. See you soon.